Ciao a tutti, it's Aram and today we are redoing the side deck tier list because I wanted to redo it and I wanted to be more in depth. So if you just want to see the tier list, go to the end and check it out. I'm gonna try to talk as much as I can about what decks want to side the cards versus what decks and such. And maybe if I remember and I have time at the end, I will talk about what cards you might want to consider siding out. Anyways, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, join the Discord, check out my site, whatever. Let's get into it. Acid Trap Hole. Also, I'm gonna be referencing data that you don't have. I'm sorry, but I have the database with pretty much every deck that's been brought to a tournament, and I'm mostly gonna be using the decks from the last year and a half to check. So anyways, Acid Trap Hole. It's a staple in Traptrix, in Artifact Traptrix side decks, any deck that plays Murmoleo. I'm gonna put it in B because, it's pretty limited in what you want to play it in, but, it's very important because those decks tend to struggle versus Gilgias, and this is a pretty great card versus Gilgias. So yeah, there's no real reason to run it if you're not running Murmoleo though. But, it's a staple one-off in any Artifact Traptrix deck. Cycle Reader. Cycle Reader is pretty much extra DD Crow, and as we'll soon see, DD Crow is pretty good. Cycle Reader is, the extra copies of DD Crow to go versus artifacts. It's especially important if you're trying to go second versus them. In terms of going second cards versus artifacts, I feel like I need to go wait a bit to get to another card before we can really discuss what going second card versus artifacts you should be siding besides DD Crow, if you should be siding more than just DD Crow. But Cycle Reader is by far the most popular of the two, and for good reason. Occasionally it's better than DD Crow, but you just mostly, like, if you had Cycle Reader and DD Crow in hand, you would just want to use Cycle Reader first. But yeah, pretty much any deck that fears artifacts and can side a lot in a matchup, you probably want to at least consider Cycle Reader. And if you're playing any deck that can make Gigant turn 1, you definitely should be siding at least one Cycle Reader, because you can just search it turn 1, and that's really fucking strong. That's kind of why Acid Trap Hole is in the meta in the first place. It doesn't read like a very strong card, but when you can search it, pretty good. Cycle Reader, Giria doesn't really struggle with artifacts, but when you can search it, pretty good. Blackhorn. I'm gonna go with an A tier. Very fucking strong versus Gilgias, obviously. Though, watch out for wiretaps and such. But we're seeing a bit more XYZ control decks running around. Heraldics, Stellars, kind of gadgets. Maybe it's just me, but Koakimerus. You can often just encounter random decks, but the main thing is Gilgias. It's one of the best cards versus Gilgias, and Gilgia is one of the best decks. So yeah, probably want to at least consider siding Blackhorn. Kind of depends on how your matchup versus Gilgias is. Dark Hole, if you don't main it, you should probably side it, and it's not the most commonly sided card I'm seeing, I think. How many decks even side Dark Hole? Not that many, I think. Let me check. Oh, no. No. Well, never mind. It's a case of the card is so good, you either main it or you don't play it at all. Yeah, nobody has brought main deck, side deck Dark Hole in the past year, which is interesting. I did not expect that. But Breaker Skill is being sided quite a bit. I'm gonna put it in B tier though, because it's more of a main deck card. But the main deck that side decks it is Artifact Traptrix. because you know lately it's been main decking DD Crow more and more. But you know, like the main reason you absolutely need to side breakthrough skill in Artifact Traptrix is because if they debunk your DD Crow, then the artifacts just go through and you are screwed. But besides that, you know, it's a very, very strong card versus Artifact Traptrix, especially if you're going first. It's especially deadly there. So if you can afford it, it's pretty good. In combo decks, it's pretty great to have like Sylvans and Mythic Rulers. Sorry, Mythic Rulers, because you know you could be facing a rank 4 deck that just randomly makes Dweller turn 1, and you know you kind of need to have an out to that. Sorry. Anyways, yeah. Besides that, you know, it's mainly for those two cards. But you know, again, it's mainly a main deck card. But it is quite versatile, so I think I'll bump it up to A tier. The king of the side deck, DD Crow. Yeah, it's the best card to side deck in the format. And spoiler alert, I think this will be the only S tier this time around. We'll get there when we get there. But DD Crow is like, it's such a good side card that it's main deckable. I don't think that's the case for other cards. You know, like Maxx C is kind of weird. Breakthrough Skill, it's a main deckable card that you can just afford to side if you can't fit it in the main deck. DD Crow is so fucking good that you might want to main it because you know the thing is that, like, Breakthrough Skill is not terrible versus anything, but it's you know, it's not amazing versus a lot of things. Like Breakthrough Skill is a great case. It's a card that I tend to side out in a lot of matchups because it's just not that impactful versus most decks. DD Crow is a card that can be completely dead versus decks like Yugia's, but at the same time it can be so impactful versus so many fucking decks that like it's worth main decking. But if you're not main decking it, unless you're playing Infernities, you should probably just side 3. I've seen Mythic Rulers just side 2 copies of that. You know, Mythics are kind of weird. You know, if your deck cannot overside, then you should probably still be playing 3 copies of DD Crow. Like, unless you know what you're doing or you're playing Infernities, just play DD Crow. If you're not maining it, just side it. You know, main deck DD Crow is good, but side deck DD Crow is like chef's kiss. Best card. Mwah. Delicioso. Speaking of DD Crow, we have Debunk, which is kind of DD Crow number 2. And it's kind of like, if your deck can afford to overside, you should absolutely be siding Debunk, in my opinion. It's the third most played card in the side deck since January of 2023 onward, and that's the data I'm looking at. You know, I have more data, but I want to keep it kind of current, but you know, not that small in scope. So you know, Debunk, super popular card. Any deck that can overside should at least, you know, should put it in. Maybe if you look at side patterns later, you can cut it out a bit. But you know, if you can overside, you should be at least playing 2 copies in the side deck, maybe 3. It's great versus Artifact Traptrix. Maybe like you probably won't be siding all 3 copies of, but you know, 2 copies when you're going first, pretty fucking good. Especially if you're playing a deck that dies to DD Crow. Versus Gyria hands, if you're playing Evil Swarms or Fire Fists, you might want to side it in. Otherwise, you probably don't, because you know the hands are not that strong versus you that warrant siding in a card specifically for them that doesn't do anything versus the rest of the deck. And you know, you might have something else for the hands, but you know, besides that, you know, versus Mermals, it's amazing. It's kind of the second best card after DD Crow. Versus Spellbooks, it's good if you want to stop Priestess, / if you need to, you know, side out shit. It's a decent card. You know, kind of depends on the deck. When I was playing it in Constellars, I just sided in 3 debunks because that was kind of the only way that spellbooks won. But for the most part, it's yeah, Priestess is not the only thing that you have to worry about in most decks. So I wouldn't max out on them, but you could if you need to side out a lot of stuff. Then again, you should probably build better if you need to side out a lot of stuff versus spellbooks. Maybe, maybe not. Kind of depends on the deck, really. Versus Boojins, amazing. It's even better than DD Crow because you can debunk Crane and Honest. Like that's great. Versus Mythics, amazing. Same with DD Crow. You can also negate stuff from the hand. It's great. Versus Infinities, we're going first. Is it good? Maybe not. Maybe not versus Infinities. Versus Madolches, you pretty much, unless they were just running Traptrixes, they are probably running stuff that gets banished. It's not the best, but if you need to side out stuff, you could consider. I mean, versus Madolches, you can pretty much side anything in, so probably not very high in the priority list. But anyways, pretty much if you can overside, just side it. Decks that, in Mermals it's not super common because they cannot overside, and, combo decks maybe. But, if you're playing Artifact Traptrix, definitely side it. If you're playing Geargas, definitely side it. If you're playing Boojins, definitely side it, probably. That kind of deal. Deep Dark Trap Hole. I'm gonna put it in B tier. I think it's definitely worse than Acid, but it's still worth a slot in most Artifact Traptrix decks. Although there is some competition for that slot. There's no real competition with Acid. You kind of have to run it. Deep Dark. We'll get there when we get there. I feel like this is just maybe a me thing. But yeah, I feel like I know that it's just a me thing because I have the data and only I have cited the card that I played instead of Deep Dark Grapple in Hat Championship. Now, Hat Championship, I didn't have the greatest bracket luck, but I put in a lot of thought into it and talked about it with Ultra Plant. So yeah, I feel like maybe it's worth something, my opinion on that. Anyways, Dimensional Prison, A tier. Amazing versus Mermals. If your deck can afford to run it, you probably should for Mermals. I've begun seeing it even in Artifact Traptrix decks, where it's the most splashable of the cards for the most part. Soul Drain can be played in some decks that the Prison cannot be played in. But the Prison is the Fisher is the most how do you say, splashable card to shut down or try to shut down Mermals. Then we have the Prison, which I'm going to put in C tier because, well, just rename this to the F tier. The C tier is mainly for very niche cards that do have a place in the metagame, and Deep Prison is 100% that because it's a great card to side if you need to fucking deal with the hands. So it's a good card to side in Evil Swarms. It's a good card to side in fucking Fire Fists. It's not very common that you need a card that deals very well with the hands, but Deep Prison is good for that. And the main thing is yeah, the Debunk and Schoolmaster deal with the hands maybe better, but Deep Prison isn't that versus the rest of the decks. So yeah, that isn't that versus the rest of gear yet. So yeah, Deep Prison is pretty good in those specific decks, but besides hands, there's not really anything that you want to side Deep Prison for. DNA Surgery. In my last tier list, I put it in F because I forgot what it was meant to do. I am gonna apologize profusely for my mistake. This card is amazing. I feel like it's underplayed. especially in Geargas, I feel like this card is must play in Geargas. If I say so myself, I'm not a Geargas player, you might disagree with me, but when your worst matchups are Boojins and Spellbooks, and this card completely counters Boojins and Spellbooks, I don't know, maybe call me crazy, but I feel like that's a pretty good card to side. Even if you auto-lose to one of the two decks, you probably want to side it. If you don't, probably not. There's better slots. I've just I've just stopped with Constellars. Breaking news, the tops haven't been played out. I'm gonna spoil myself. I sided DNA surgery because I kind of didn't know what to put in his slot. I wouldn't really side the card in Constellars because you already have a good matchup versus both decks. But yeah, if you have a bad matchup versus either or Boojis or Spellbooks, DNA surgery definitely to consider. If you're weak to both, probably should play it. Even 3 copies. It's such a counter to those decks. And there's another card that counters those two decks very well, but it's a lot harder to splash in decks. We'll get there when we get there. Next up, we have Dust Tornado, which kind of like the person is very niche, but the very niche slot it's filling is for Mermals. Not against Mermals, but the main deck that sides Dust Tornado is Mermals, because you need outs to Floodgates. There's competition in that slot. We'll have those other cards in there soon enough, but you need, if your deck needs to out Floodgates, so Mermals, Boojins as 2. Dust Tornado is 100% an option. You might want to consider, maybe I might have to bump it down to C tier, but because it's an option out of 3 cards and they are kinda equally played. But I'm gonna put it in B tier because if it's a common side deck card in Mermals, it's probably at least B tier. I feel like I've gotta make a tier below to put cards that just main deck them. Yeah, that seems like a better idea for when people skip ahead and just look at the tier list. Effect Veiler. We have Effect Veiler, and I'm gonna check on the data. The thing is like, it's decently played. It's played enough, but the kind of the main thing is like, there's no real deck that loves to side it. The Spellbooks. Okay, it's a spellcaster. You make life. You can make funny plays with it. Although, frankly, I feel like Spellbook players mostly just play it because it's funny. Madolches, it's a hand trap. So, Madolches obviously like having Veiler because it's a hand trap. Besides that, it's a pretty niche option. There are some topping lists with it outside of those decks, but not that many. What does it hit? It's decent versus Cat, because, going first, Karkar is amazing, so if you can Veiler that, it's good. If you can Veiler Myrmidon, it's also good, but, there's better effect negates for it. If you are playing versus Geargas, it's not very good. Versus Mermals, it's not very good. Versus Boojins, it's actually pretty good because, it stops them from setting up immediately. But at the same time, there's other ways to, not prevent that, but cure that, which, depending on what you want to do, is might be better. Versus Spellbooks, it's actually pretty good versus Spellbooks, honestly. So it's better than the spells and traps because they cannot wisdom it. So yeah, I feel like it's a decent side card in mainly Madolches. Spellbooks, I feel like they're playing it mostly for the meme. Because like it's not like they fear TTHN. It's not like they fear normal summon Murmileo. It's not like they appear particularly normal summon card. It's mostly about the artifacts, and you know, I feel like they have more stuff to worry about than those cards when they're siding, when Spellbook is siding versus Traptrix, versus Artifact Traptrix. So yeah, I'm gonna put it in C tier, maybe controversial, but yeah. The hands, I'm gonna put them in the B tier simply because, you know, it's more of a main deck card. You know, Gravekeepers often side it, well, but, you know, frankly, just main it. Even also not started maining it now. You know, in decks that die to Evil Swarms, it's an option to deal with Evil Swarms. It's also an option to deal with Gravekeepers, to deal with Necro Valley. So, you know, in those decks where you kinda die if they make if they make Ophion or Necro Valley, the hands have that niche. And, you know, in those decks, you just want to side them. So, you know, it's Mythics, Heretics, maybe Sylvans, maybe. Seems like a stretch. You know, they're more main deck cards, but they have their place in the side deck. And besides those kinds of decks, you know, they're also good in versus artifacts. But again, just if that's the thing you're siding them for, you should probably just main them. Flying C. I'm gonna save that until we get to Maxx C. But here we have Chalice, which I'm gonna put it in C tier. It's the main competitor to Cycle Reader in terms of the extra cards that you are setting in versus artifacts when going second. But it's like, it's kind of between side deck it and just main it. Because, you know, the main reason I'm putting it in C tier is because most decks that want to play it are just maining it. You know, Bujin's very, very strong in the main deck. Evil Swarms also good, I think, in the main deck. You know, the latest winning list was playing it in the main deck, and I feel like that's pretty good if you're not playing a completely stun build of Evil Swarms, a more dynamic build. It's been cited a lot in Constellars, but I kinda don't cite it anymore. I see it's being main decked a lot in Infernities and a bit in Sylvans. You know, besides that, most of the decks that want to play it just main it. But you know, it's for decks that want to go first, that can deal with artifact decks if they can stop the artifacts. And you know, Chalice is in that sense, it's a lot more niche than Cycle Reader, but in those decks it's better because you can deal with Sanctum, not just with you know, them coming from the graveyard shenanigans. But you know, most decks that you would want to play Chalice in, they will just main it, so I'm gonna put it in C tier. Forbidden Lance, I feel like that's just a main deck card at this point. Let's see what deck side the Lance. Not very many, and you know, those that do probably should be just main decking it, and probably are siding a third copy. Yeah, I'm just gonna put it in just main it. It's such a good card though. Full House or Royal Flush, I don't know. D tier. Maybe it's an option in Cyber Dragon artifacts. That's kind of it. Imperial Iron Wall, which is mainly it's the competitor to DNA Surgery, but the main issue with it is that it's kind of hard to fit in a deck, because pretty much even if your deck doesn't banish stuff for itself, you probably are siding cards that do banish. So in that sense, it's kind of bad. But it is seeing quite a bit of play in Mermals. and also Girgia Karakuri. So yeah, those are decks that do want to play it. I kind of forgot about it, but yeah, versus mammals, you know, sure it turns off Tidal, but at the same time turns off DD Crow and Debunk, so that's pretty good. So yeah, kind of it. It's just a normal card for the most part, and Girgia Karakuri as well. What the hell? Kaiku, Spellbook plays it. I still don't quite get why they're playing it anymore. Like, yeah, it's cute because it's spellcaster. Stick it on the board. You know, just play DD Crow. Like, does any deck besides spellbooks even play it? No, literally not. Yeah, I'm just gonna put it in C tier. It's just for one deck, and even then, I wouldn't really. If I played the deck myself, I wouldn't even play it because like it's not even that strong versus artifact decks. It's kind of niche. So, like it's made for rulers, I guess. Witches, Fernities, Boojins. Oh yeah, actually it's good against Boojins, but what else is good versus Boojins? Spellbooks. So yeah, not really a point. Its favor. Anyways, going on. Light Imprisoning Mirror, amazing. One of the best cards in the side deck to side deck in the format, because of artifacts. If your deck is not playing lights, you definitely want to at least consider Light Imprisoning. It's also good versus Boojins, so if your deck is weak to Boojins, you might want to consider it. It's a pretty common inclusion in Mermals because it's good versus Artifact Traptrix, and it's good versus Boojins, which is very good, which is a pretty bad matchup for Mermals. It's also common in Girgias. A lot of decks hide it. Pretty much any deck that isn't playing light monsters and isn't a combo deck, probably you want to at least consider it, and even for combo decks you might want to consider it. And it's pretty much the only Floodgate that's ever gonna stick versus artifact decks. All that and skill drain. Macrocosmos, I'm gonna put in A tier. Like the Fisher, it's. I feel like I would call it the worst card of the trio. Or where is it? Soul Drain. There you are. I'm gonna call it the worst card in the trio because it's the least splashable. Decks like Artifact Traptrix can play the Fisher. Decks like Spellbooks can play Soul Drain. There is no deck that can play Macro but cannot play the other two. So it's the worst of the three, but it's still pretty fucking good. I'm just gonna start ordering a bit. So yeah, I feel like these cards are pretty good. Psycho Reader and Blackhorn, very good. Breakthrough is I'm gonna put Breakthrough below the Floodgate traps. Majesty's Fiend, no deck sides it anymore. Malevolent Catastrophe, I'm gonna put it in B tier alongside Dust Tornado, and I'm also gonna get Twister. These are the main three cards that you are playing if you fear Floodgates. So yeah, Mermal sides them because MST isn't enough. We'll get to MST soon enough, but yeah. Oh, you got to Maxx C. So yeah, Maxx C. Basically, sorry, it's been 3 days since I recorded the last part. I had to do something happened, but you could say I got Maxx C in real life. Anyways, I was playing Girgias, I wasn't playing Infernity, so it's fine. But no, yeah, Maxx C. I'm going to put it in A, top of A, but kind of top of A. Like the thing is with Maxx C is well, just main it because like for most decks Maxx C is just better upstart because for a lot of decks upstart's soul charge fueling is not very good. especially for Cat. Cat wants to play aggressively, so you really don't want to play upstart. So you usually play Maxx C in the main deck, even if it's like if you look at the top decks, it's like Girgia, Mermails, Spellbooks, which is not the most Maxxiable bunch besides Mermails. And even then, Mermails is like a 2 Maxx C deck, not a 3 Maxx C deck. But the main thing is that you just play it in the main and then you side it out for other stuff, and it's upstart basically. So it's not as necessary to side deck anymore because with everyone main decking it, Infinities and Sylvans are played a lot less, and if you go far in the tournament, you're probably not gonna encounter many of them, maybe one or two. But there's like at most one combo deck in any given top cut, one or two. And the other thing is Flank C is definitely gaining some ground. I'm gonna put it between the hands and the Anti-floodgate brigade. Because Flank C is kind of better Maxx C if your deck fears Evil Swarms. It's kind of mainly it. And also if your deck can bounce Flank C. So, decks like Mythic Rulers, Sylvans, Constellars, they all prefer Flank C. Because Evil Swarms. It's kind of it. Both decks hit Infinities. Many combo decks get kind of hit, like Adolches. Both decks kind of die to both of them. But the main thing is if you fear Evil Swarms more than you fear Sylvans, which those decks do. And in case of decks where you can bounce Flank C is also pretty good versus Girgias because you can just floodgate them out of the extra deck and they can't really win if you have a big monster up and they can't go into the extra deck. Next up, we have Mind Control, which I'm gonna put in A tier, where probably somewhere around here. It's another card that gets mained a lot, but main enough. But it's not like Maxx C, where it's like basically more main deck than it is side decked. The only deck that main decks it kinda regularly, and even then it's not a staple, is Mermails, and that's pretty much correct because it has access to level 3s, level 4s, level 7s. If your deck can make level 4s and level 7s, you should definitely consider maining Mind Control. If not, kind of depends. But if you have very consistent rank 4 access, or just like good normal for level 4 normal summons, it's definitely a good card to side deck, mainly for Girgias and also for the mirror match. Those are kind of the two main applications. There's also Wujin sometimes, kind of depends on what you're playing. Maybe it's a deck that they send hair turn 1, and if you open Mind Control, it's good turn 2. Maybe it's a deck that overloads on targeting, so Mind Control is good like overall in general. Can't really think of a deck like that like has a lot of non-destruction but targeting removal. I guess maybe Monarchs. I don't know. But yeah, the main thing is Girgias and also the mirror matches. meanwhile. Nobleman of Crossout. A tier. Where in A tier? Probably here. You know, it kind of depends. I feel like it is a bit more. How do you say? Oh, actually, here. Mind control is for the most part better. You know, there's some decks that don't play that can't really play mind control, but you know, thing with Nobleman is can your deck get over Georgia on turn 1, Georgia Armor on turn 1, sorry, turn 2. If not, then Nobleman is a pretty good card, but you know, it kind of also depends on the deck. The main deck that plays it a lot is Artifact Traptrix, because you know, they can't really play around it by putting stuff face up, because then they get destroyed by Moral Attack. Let's see. Let me see if other decks play it. I remember playing it in Madolches. Yeah, it's mainly Artifact Traptrix, then a bit of you know, Yugia, Gravekeeper, and Madolches, and you know, some other decks. So I'm gonna bump it down to B tier, about here. Yeah, it seems fair. It's mainly for Artifact Traptrix, but you know, it's a good card in other decks too. For Gigas. Prohibition, I don't know what it's doing here. This is my tier list, by the way. You know, I built it like a year ago, and I updated it with a couple of cards that you know, I either forgot or are more relevant now. But yeah, Rivalry. I don't see it cited much anymore. At least I don't remember. Maybe Spellbook cited still. Let me see. Rivalry of Warlords. I'm looking up in my database, by the way, so you know, sorry for the lack of visuals on it. But yeah, it's decently common in spellbooks, Sylvans, and Mythic Rulers, and also Gyugia Karakuri. Gonna put it in B tier, where yeah, this looks fine. Decree, you know, this is a pretty good timing. If I had completed the video like a couple of days ago, I would have probably put it lower. Nope says it's pretty good in Mermels. You know, and you know, it makes sense. His reasoning makes sense, although you know, he played Malevolent Catastrophe instead of Twister alongside it, which I think makes a lot of sense. But I'm still gonna put it in C tier for now because it's still pretty niche. Hasn't seen much play. You know, I've seen it in like its main home is in Lightsworn decks. Both Lightsworn Rulers and Chaos Lightsworns often cite it, and you know, that's not a great indictment of the card. You know, that's not a great sign. But you know, if Mermel starts playing it more, I can see it rising up. But you know, the main issue with the Decree, it's not very reliable in the format, because you know, artifact decks just pop it very easily. Yugia can make Exiton, or Diamond Eye Wolf is a better example. But you know, it can stick, and you know, when it does, it kind of wins the game. Schoolmeister, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Top of B tier seems about right. Maybe it's more like in line with Flying Sea. You know, it's kind of like a weaker version of a hand trap that a couple of decks prefer. Yeah, I feel like that makes more sense. You know, Schoolmeister is better than DD Crow in decks that fear hands, because it can stop hands, and it's also better than DD Crow in Keepers because they can't play DD Crow. Well, in decks like Evil Swarms and Fire Fists, I would definitely play both Meister and DD Crow. If there is room for them both, even looking at main deck and side deck slots. So I probably put it below Flying C because, flying more often than not replaces Maxx. Meister, it's not as often, but, in Gravekeepers, it does replace it. Soul Release, I don't know what it's doing here. Does anyone side this card anymore? It was played in 2014 to stop Lights from Rulers, but nowadays I've seen there's only 9 people that brought it to a tournament since 2023, and only 1 top 8, and it's Yomero, so it's not. It's kind of weird. So I guess I'm gonna put it at the top of D tier because it's good versus Lights from Rulers. I guess Bujins, but versus Bujins, versus both decks. There's also Cycle Reader and Crow, obviously, and Rhapsody. So it's kind of there's a lot of competition. Spiritualism. I only really see it in Infernity and 4 Infernities, and Infernity is not a very popular deck right now. So yeah. Spiritual. Let's see if any other decks played it really. I've seen a couple of Heraldic Beast lists play it for some reason. But yeah, frankly, it's probably even a bit high. Actually, yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's above Kaiku. I don't like Kaiku, but I like Chalice. So I'm gonna bump Chalice. I like Chalice, frankly. I do, but anyways. System down. Wake up. Wake up. I don't know what soundtrack is going on right now, if it fits in any way, shape, or form. Maybe it just sounded terrible. But System Down is pretty terrible too. There's much better anti-Gygia stuff. I'm pretty. I gotta say, Konami in 2013, 2012, I don't know, kind of hit it out of the park by designing a very strong machine deck that doesn't die to Cyber Dragon or System Down. So congrats on that, but System Down is not very good. And, well, I didn't put Cyber Dragon in, but I've seen more System Downs than I've seen Cyber Dragons, frankly. And even still, System Down, pretty bad card. Don't play it. Transmigration Prophecy, which I'm seeing a lot less of. Ultraplan played it a lot in camp, but now not really, and makes sense. It's kind of better to just play Cycle Readers and stuff. Yeah, it's mainly in Artifact Traptrix decks, normal decks sometimes, and Madolche decks. Yeah, it's fine. The thing is, it's a bit fine versus normals, but at the same time, it's outclassed by the Debunk and Cycle Reader, and obviously DD Crow. I guess you could play it in. No, actually, no, you can't. You can't play it in Gravekeepers. So yeah, I'm gonna put it at bottom of B tier. Yeah, it's extra. It's too outclassed by Crow, Debunk, and Cycle Reader. See a lot of play. Trapstun. It's more of a main deck card, frankly. But let me see what decks even side deck Trapstun. Stellars, Infinities mainly side deck. The main home of Trapstun is Infinities, in the side deck at least. A bunch of other decks have played it, but not that much, and for the most part, not too much success. But there's some topping lists with it in the main deck, mainly in the side deck. Mainly like Heraldic Beasts. Seen success with it in the side deck. spellbooks, BDM dubs. No, sorry, Sylvan. Poison topped with it in the one with it in the side deck. So I'm gonna put it in B tier, kind of about here, and it's kind of like a bit of a just main it though. So yeah, but you know, Infernity does prefer to side it, so I'm gonna put it in B tier. TTHN, mostly, you know, you side extra copies. This is gonna be Let's see if any decks played it in the side deck. Not very many at all, so I'm gonna put it in just minute. Vanity's Emptiness, you know, there's a bit of an argument to setting it in some decks. Like, I have considered it in Constellars, but you know, I'm not setting it. Forgot how to check for writers, so I'm tired. Fuck it, top of seat here. It's kinda, you know, it's a bit of a just minute, frankly. So yeah. Void Trample. This is kind of my spice. I'm the only person who has brought it to a side deck in a tournament, and it wasn't really effective, but mostly because of luck. But you know, I'm gonna put it in C tier, like here. But you know, I think it's pretty fucking good. I cited it in HC23 in Artifact Traptrix because I wanted to have something better than bottomless for Artifact Traptrix, because you know, I said that out, and you know, it's not like the best slot, so I cut it. Then I realized then, oh shit, I need Deep Dark Trample for spellbooks, and I cut it. Wait a minute, Void works just fine. So yeah, basically it's a replacement for Deep Dark, and it's nowhere near as good versus ruler decks, but versus the mirror match it's pretty fucking good, and it's also it retains kinda the same role as it in the spellbook matchup, which is important because you need because you know, otherwise all of your truffles are dead. You need 2 truffles for them to make something happen. So next up we have Wiretap, which pretty great card. Yeah, it's kind of like, if you don't know what to side, there's really not much wrong that you can do by just siding Wiretap. You know, it's simply in spellbooks, in Madolches, in Evil, in Evil Swarm, but you know, the main 2 decks that side it a lot are Artifact Traptrix and Girgias. You know, mainly for Girgias it's mainly just like return the Wiretap. For Artifact Traptrix it's more like a one-off that you add in if you need another card to side in versus Girgias, besides, you know, Mind Control, Acid Trample, Nobleman, Horn. You know, there's nothing wrong with siding half your side deck just for Girgias, you know? In Artifact Traptrix list, I feel like that is entirely valid. You're still gonna lose, but you know, you can try. So I'm gonna put it like near the bottom of it here. XYZ Anchor, I'm gonna put it at kinda near the bottom of C tier, because Flying C is just better. You know, XYZ okay, so if you really just fear Evil Swarms and you are playing Maxx C in the side deck, not Flying C, and you're playing like a ruler deck, or you know, one of those decks that hates evil storms and draws a lot. Playing like 1 or 2 X-P Anchors is a fine choice, because you know, if you're gonna try to draw into the card, you know, Flying C is not gonna be very useful. X-P Anchor is good. You know, the main thing is Flying C just kinda covers more stuff. Anchor is really fucking niche, so I'm gonna put it in. Okay, maybe I'm putting it a bit too low, but you know, still in C tier, in my opinion, definitely. And to round off the tier list, we have Zombie World, which, I mean, you know, I've said it in the past, but you know, the main thing is like it's only good for mythic rulers, so the only deck that should seriously kinda sorta consider it for the side deck is Mermals. And you know, even then, mythic is not the most common stuff, but you know, it is one of your worst matchups. It's also very good versus Bujins, which is also another bad matchup. So you know, for Mermal decks, it's an option, but that's kind of the only deck where I would consider it. So I'm gonna put it like below Imperial Iron Wall. Actually, you know, Imperial Iron Wall is a bit more versatile, even. Not that much though. So yeah, that's it. That's my tier list. DD Crow is the best card. Just play 3. Leave a like, join the Discord, leave a comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good shit, and good.